Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this RNN Group webinar, one of our series and our free lunchtime webinars. My name is Lucy Barnwell. I'm the Director of Marketing and Learner Recruitment for the RNN Group, and we are pleased to be giving you a really important webinar today on supporting your new apprentice. Hugely important, and a huge thank you to all of our employers who are taking on apprentices this year and supporting them in a really important part of the skills drive in this economy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our speakers and then hand over to our guest speaker as well. So firstly, can I introduce James Godsall? Many of you know him. He is our Director of Employer Partnerships and Apprenticeships and will be leading the presentation today. We have Claire Carter, who is Curriculum Manager for Services to Business and Apprenticeship Provision. And then I'm going to hand over now to Jason Austin. Jason is our CEO and Principal for the RNN Group, and he has come along today to start our webinar and just give you a few insights about today's webinar. So Jason, thank you so much. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you all to this webinar and thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much to all our partners who are also attending, who are employing an apprentice. We are very pleased to be able to support you along the journey as you develop individual skills that are needed for the future and supporting the local, regional and national economy. So our staff are here to support you and your apprentices every step of the way. And this webinar will provide some key insights into what it is like to have a new apprentice, some of the areas to be mindful of, as well as what to expect along the journey. So apprentices, as you may know, provide you as an employer with the opportunity to attract new talent into your business or to upskill and retain your existing workforce. Apprenticeships allow you to create a skilled workforce, a workforce that's ready for the future, whereby you're equipping individuals with the skills they need to thrive and to meet the long-term skills needs in the economy. For individuals, an apprenticeship provides the opportunity to either start a career, progress their career, or even change direction within their career. The opportunities are endless with apprenticeships, which are a perfect way to gain real-life industry experience whilst in paid employment. So the apprenticeship team here at RNN Group will be with you every step of the way. They will be able to guide and support you along the journey, and they will support you to support your apprentices to progress and to achieve. We also look forward in the future to seeing your apprentices being nominated for and hopefully win awards at our annual and highly anticipated Apprenticeship Awards, which we hold annually. So thank you again for taking on an apprentice with the RNN Group. We are here to support both you and your apprentices throughout the whole learning journey. I am now going to hand over to James Godsall for the remainder of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. So I'm going to present to you our slides with regards to our mentor webinar, if I can get that to work. There we go. Okay. So as Jason said, mentoring and coaching is crucial for the development of all apprentices. This applies to apprentices that have just left school, that are 16 to 18, but it equally applies for the apprenticeships that we run right the way through to level 7, which is the equivalent of a master's degree. Anytime you're taking a new journey with regards to learning and development, it's important that it's a tripartite agreement from both the training provider, the individual that's undertaking the training, and the employer. And we hope that some of the information that we're going to present to you today gives you a little bit more guidance with regards to how to do that effectively. So the first thing, why is coaching and mentoring important? Well, the first thing is it helps the apprentice, certainly if they're a new apprentice, to get the confidence that they need to feel at home within that business. Oftentimes, this might be an apprentice's first job. They'll be feeling very nervous. And unlike a manager who is there to manage a business function or a job role, a mentor is there to support that apprentice with emotional support and help them to understand the business and their job role. Now, oftentimes, a mentor and a manager may be the same person, but it's important that we can differentiate those two duties. A mentor should be a subject expert. So somebody who can talk with confidence about the area that the apprentice is struggling, the apprentice is going through and anything they may be struggling with. They'll also help provide advice and support and feedback, not just with regards to their studies at college, but in terms of their job role and development opportunities. They'll also support the apprentice to develop practical skills and oftentimes, more importantly, the behaviours expected in industry. And that might be things like timekeeping, confidence, communication, and also the practical skills that are needed. So the first thing you should do when you take on an apprentice is put together a thorough apprentice induction. Now, most employers will have an induction process of their own. What we're trying to do with this slide is make it clear that there's a difference between inducting a skilled member of staff and inducting an apprentice. If you're taking on an existing member of staff to an apprenticeship programme, this might not be relevant for you, but certainly for new members of staff, it's important that they have regular one-to-one meetings with somebody and they have the opportunity to shadow members of the team who are doing the role or similar. And again, that might be the mentor themselves. It might be that they rotate around the business and they get job shadowing and mentoring support from a number of different people. But what's important is that they support that person to embed within the organisation. They set the standard with regards to dress code, time management, work behaviours. We certainly do that at the college. We have an expectation around timekeeping, attendance, dress code at college, and we have a multi-stage disciplinary procedure where learners fall below that process. But it's important that that's replicated in the workplace so that we are all setting a high expectation for learners and helping them in their learning journey. We need to support the apprentice to understand the wider development within the team. So what their job role is and how that function fits in with the wider business. They also need to know where to go for support if they've got any questions. And finally, a clear outline of their job role and the objectives. And advice I always give is it's important to do that in a multi-stage approach. Hitting an apprentice with 20 or 30 objectives you want them to achieve in the first year is going to be very challenging and a bit overwhelming. It's useful to break that down into month or 3-month cycles where that you go through the objectives for the first month, the objectives for the second or third month, and then progress from there. It's also important, wherever possible, that the college is involved in these inductions, not necessarily at the business end, but certainly with regards to linking in with the apprenticeship and your apprenticeship skills tutor knowing exactly what they've been taught with regards to their induction, because that will help us to embed those skills as well. Okay, one of the key things that an apprentice will be expected to do is log 6 hours of off-the-job training every week. If you imagine learners that attend college will attend 36 weeks of training. So even if they attend college for day release, they're still not meeting the 52 weeks of 6 hours that we need them to do. Now, a lot of that comes down to logging training that they receive in the workplace. And we've got some examples there on the screen of exactly what we would expect to see, but that has to be logged by the apprentice. Now, as a mentor, we would ask that you support the apprentice by reminding them of any training that they have received that is classed as off-the-job training. Quick rule of thumb, if it's something that is them doing their job role, that is not off-the-job training. If it's something that is enhancing their skill set for their job role, that is off-the-job training. So there's plenty of examples on there. It is an unexhaustive list. Attendance at competitions is an example, manufacturer training, but more realistically, day-to-day job shadowing, anytime teaching apprentices a particular skill, anytime they spent being mentored, one-to-one time that talks about what they need to do to develop their skills can be included. And I'm going to pass over to Claire, who's going to go through in a little bit more detail how you can log off the job training and how it's done effectively.
Thank you, James. So how can I support as an employer? So as an employer, you can support apprentices to gain new knowledge, skills and behaviours through off-the-job learning by a varied method. Highlighting any induction and training plans at the start of the apprentices programme is really key. Which links to the KSBs. This will give the tutor a clear picture of where you can support any off-the-job learning as an employer in the workplace. This will also build confidence for both the tutor and also the employer. Allocating an appropriate mentor. Make sure that this is someone that's experienced and supportive that can help the apprentice within the workplace. Allocate time out in the workplace to support the apprentice to complete any off-the-job learning. So all off-the-job learning, as James stated before, this should be completed in working hours. Ask the industry expert, support the apprentice to learn new skills, help him build relationships and bring further knowledge into the business. and also frequently review the timesheet entries on one file, highlighting any missed learning against the KSBs. Learners often forget to document learning in the workplace, so please encourage them to keep a diary and check those timesheets to ensure that they're accurate. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Claire. Okay, so the other thing that's really important with regards to apprentices developing their skills in the workplace is progress reviews. Progress reviews are done every 8 to 12 weeks. We'll do them more frequently if we feel they're needed, but equally, if we feel like apprentices are making progress consistently, we won't do a progress review for the sake of it. We have to do them every 12 weeks as an absolute minimum, but we'll work with you on exactly when and how often we would expect to do those. As you imagine, at the beginning, we're going to do them more frequently because there's going to be a lot of progress being made, but it's also an opportunity for us to get together and look at what have they done, what skills have they learned, and what are we setting as targets for the next 8 or 12 weeks. What it does is establish clear links between the training that they're receiving at work and the training that we're providing as a training provider. If you imagine if they come to college 1 day a week, they are spending 4 days with you as an employer, learning skills and knowledge that are relevant to their apprenticeship and are preparing them for their endpoint assessment, which we'll come on to in a minute. So it's important that we can look at those links, make sure that we are syncing up with existing training that's happening, but we can also set reviews, set targets, so I say, with regard to their individual learning plan. When they first start with us, we will complete with you an individual learning plan where we'll talk through the skills, knowledge and behaviours we need to deliver, and where appropriate, we'll put a timescale on those. When we come to do a review, we'll be looking and saying, did we meet those objectives? Sometimes that might not happen. And it's important that we have really clear communication between you as an employer and us as a provider on challenges that you're experiencing in business. We often find that workplace pressures mean that sometimes apprentices can't attend college or that they have not been unable to submit assignments. That's okay in the short term, but we need a plan to catch those learners back up because otherwise they'll very quickly fall behind. So we can plan that work together. We can get feedback on how they're performing in the workplace, and we can give you feedback on how they're performing at college. It also helps to establish the core skills in the workplace. Oftentimes we get feedback from employers that the most important thing that we need for apprentices is employability skills, confidence, timekeeping, team working. And they're things that we need to work on together because they are embedded within all of our apprenticeships, but they're not something that we explicitly teach in the same way we would, for example, a welding skill as part of an engineering apprenticeship. So it's really important that we're working together on how we're developing those communication skills. And if we're seeing any gaps that we know, so that the apprenticeship skills tutor can start to put that additional support in place. It also highlights any changes needed to meet the needs of the individual. For example, if they have a change of job role, change of circumstances, and we need to be a little bit more flexible with the delivery, the progress reviews are a great way of us managing that. I'm going to pass on to Claire, who's going to talk a little bit in a bit more detail about specifically how you can support an apprentice at progress reviews.
Thanks, James. So regular three-way reviews determine if the training and development, both in the workplace and classroom, is supporting the learner, making progress against those KSBEs, adding value to themselves and also to the role. You as an employer can help by being present at each review to show how you fully support that apprentice. If this isn't possible, then please speak to the tutor beforehand so that you can give an update, and then this becomes a meaningful review if the employer cannot attend. Know and understand the KSBs and the EPA grading requirements that your apprentice is working towards. You as an employer could support them to achieve a much higher grade if you're understanding the grading criteria. Check scorecards and any off-the-job entries have been completed accurately on one file ahead of each review. Learners often under or over-egg these areas, so please be careful when checking these. Be mindful of any previous targets set and any future targets to support the apprentice's development. Promote how any new skills learned have impacted on your organisation. Let the apprentice and tutor be aware of these, and this will build their self-confidence. Make the tutor aware of any concerns that you may have. Our tutors can help and put actions in place to address any concerns raised. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think with regard to the scorecard, the way we operate as a training provider is a little bit different to a lot of other colleges and training providers in that we review those scorecards at the beginning and at every review. So it's important that we can show that consistent developmental feedback being given to support that apprentice with developing their knowledge and skills. So the endpoint assessment, which I referenced earlier. Now, we have done a separate webinar on endpoint assessment if you want to get a little bit more of a deep dive on exactly what's expected. But just to give you a bit of an overview, an endpoint assessment is something all apprentices undertake at the end of their apprenticeship. That goes from level 2 apprentices right the way through to level 7 apprenticeships. Those endpoint assessments are the crucial part of an apprenticeship, and regardless of whether they've completed any underpinning qualifications, they won't get their apprenticeship completion certificate and still have undertaken an endpoint assessment. It's the final part of their apprenticeship, and it's a multi-stage assessment of the apprentice's skill set. Normally, it's done in 2 or 3 stages with a work-based project or practical observation, and that will be done by an independent endpoint assessment organisation. They'll come and meet with that apprentice, watch them working, and mark them in the same way you would for a driving test. Have a lessons with a driving instructor and a test with somebody else. This is exactly the same way. So this endpoint assessor is going to be watching that person, often in silence, often writing notes. So it's quite a nerve-wracking experience for a learner. This is where a mentor is really important, because they can be supporting the apprentice on a day-to-day basis to do things like ask them questions that they know are going to come up in the endpoint assessment. Observe them doing practical work and check that that is of an appropriate standard that we would need to see, and also help them with the confidence that they need to be able to go ahead and complete the assessments. Once they've completed the endpoint assessment, they will either get a pass, a merit, or a distinction. Some don't have the merit, some just have pass and distinction, but they will all have a multi-stage grading system, and that's important to be able to show the apprentice that have achieved well and those apprentices that have only just gotten through. Endpoint assessments are nerve-wracking, and apprentices will be very nervous. As an employer or a mentor, you can support them by understanding the different skills, knowledge, and behaviours that are part of an apprenticeship. Every apprenticeship will have an endpoint assessment plan that will talk exactly what the endpoint assessor is going to want to see when they come to see the learner. It will talk through, if we take bricklaying as an example, the tolerances for the bricklaying, the cuts that they will be expected to make, the time frames that they'll be expected to work on. So you as an employer can understand that and can support the apprentice in the day-to-day duties. More practically, when it comes to the interview, apprentices will be asked a series of questions by their endpoint assessment organisation, and they'll grade them on their responses. We can provide a list of potential questions. Obviously, we'll not know what the actual questions are, but we have a bank of mock questions which we can provide to employers, and you can ask the apprentices as they're going about their daily duties. It just helps to reinforce what we're teaching them at college, because don't forget, some of these apprentices will be coming to college for an afternoon a month. In the least case. So those apprentices are going to need to do some work in their own time, but at work, to be able to develop those skills and the confidence to answer those questions. Share your knowledge and experience. It helps to contextualize things a lot more when they can see somebody who's doing a similar job role to them, telling them how they would approach it or how they've done it in the past. Provide that regular feedback. We've got a slide on feedback in a minute, but it's important that you are giving them consistent advice. If they do something wrong or you spot some bad habits, it's important that you provide that feedback to them, help them make those micro adjustments as they go about their daily duties to become confident in their skill set. Of course, the college will provide lots of support in that, but it's important that you understand their workload and the projects that they're working on. Maths and English. Probably the least sexy part of any apprenticeship is the maths and English requirements they expect to do. However, they are mandatory, and they are a skill set that oftentimes apprentices will say it was the most challenging but the most rewarding, because oftentimes when apprentices need a functional skill as part of their apprenticeship, it's the thing they feel the least confident in. We find this especially the case with existing staff members. If we take a care home, for example, oftentimes carers are extremely confident in their job role. They know how to do it, and they do a really good job. They're confident speaking to people, and they can write assignments. But maths and English is something that they perhaps didn't get at school and have not touched since then. So it's a mandatory requirement that apprentices that don't have an appropriate level of qualification in maths and English undertake that as part of their apprenticeship. So you can see on the screen there what we would consider the level 1 and level 2 apprenticeship qualifications. If you're studying a level 2 apprenticeship, you will study a level 1 functional skill, or you'll have an exemption. If you're studying a level 3 or above apprenticeship, you'll be expected to demonstrate level 2 functional skills. So that is an A to C or 4 to 9 in new money. And we'll need to see evidence of that before we can unenroll apprentices from functional skills. It doesn't matter whether you're studying a senior manager apprenticeship. If we haven't got those exemptions, we will expect you to study those programs. Attendance at those functional skill classes is absolutely crucial in apprentices progressing through their course. And every year, learners don't attend, don't enjoy the course, and then fall behind as a result. So it's really important that we are singing from the same hymn sheet with regards to attendance and functional skills, and that we can get learners through those programs. Where we see learners attend consistently, we get them through. Where learners don't attend or try and avoid sessions, that's where learners can fall behind. Don't worry, we'll be keeping you in the loop on exactly when learners attend and don't attend, so we can nip these things in the bud pretty quickly. But it's important that you understand the importance of maths and English when it comes to your apprentice and their development. Okay, communication. I appreciate that you'll be communicating with your apprentice every day, and we certainly don't want to teach you to suck eggs, but performance reviews are a really important way of developing the communication with the apprentice and contributing to their personal development. It helps the apprentice to understand what you're trying to achieve with their job role and how that job role interacts with the wider business goals. It's important that they develop and understand the skills and knowledge they need for their job role and areas that they need to develop. Oftentimes, it can be easy to let an apprentice do something that's poor practice, but we don't challenge it because we want to just let them embed. It's important that that is challenged, and it's challenged professionally. And there's a slide in a minute on exactly how we can do that. But it's important that we are challenging apprentices when they're falling below the expectations. That won't always be with regards to their behaviour. Sometimes it will be their practical skills falling below the standard that we expect. And it's important that we're working together on that. Progress reviews should bring those skill sets out, but it's important that the employer attends those and can feed back. So if we say, for example, that there's a particular element of joinery that they're struggling with, hanging a door, for example, and the employer can feed back to us that actually their ability to hang a door is very weak, we can make sure that when they attend college, we do extra sessions on that so that they feel more confident when they go back out into industry, because it's costing you time and money every time they do it incorrectly. But that will only happen if we know exactly what the issue is. Equally, it's important that the apprentice understands that. If you're unsure about how to give feedback to an apprentice, you can always speak to your apprenticeship skills tutor, who can either do it with you or give you some advice on how to do it correctly. Each apprentice will react differently to different elements of feedback, and you'll need to use your own knowledge around emotional intelligence to make sure you do that correctly. But at the same time, we have to get that performance at the levels that we want. And where we see learners falling below those standards, we need to be able to challenge it. So consistent feedback is the best way to be able to get an apprentice the skills and knowledge. We see employers that do weekly one-to-ones, monthly one-to-ones, quarterly one-to-ones. I think anything more than that, and you risk a bit of mission drift. You miss that apprentice potentially going off and doing something incorrectly for a long period of time and then embedding that poor practice. What we want to do is make those micro adjustments as we go. Every time we see an apprentice doing something that we don't think is at the standard we want to see, we need to be able to challenge it. Now, there are 100 different ways that you can give that feedback. The example I've given on there is the GROW model. And that's an effective way of giving feedback. So the first thing is, what's the goal? What is it that we want the apprentice to be able to do? What's the reality of them achieving that at the moment? Have they tried it multiple times and failed? Have they not tried it at all? Have we not seen the expected confidence with regards to that? And then what are our options? So going through a series of questions with the apprentice to say, how can we best get you to where we want our goal to be? And then finally, what's the best way to do that? And there may be multiple different ways that you can support an apprentice to make the required adjustments. But as a mentor, it's important that you do that through encouragement and a commitment to action. Claire's going to give a little bit more support around how you can best give feedback.
To support apprentices to achieve their EPA, it's vital that employers give regular developmental feedback. They need to know and understand the different gradings against each EPA element to help the apprentice achieve higher grades. Each EPA has either a pass, merit or distinction depending on the standard, so knowing the difference between these gradings is vital. Use your skills and expertise as an employer to ensure apprentices are receiving positive praise where doing well and further guidance on how to improve where necessary. Encourage 360-degree feedback to gain a further insight from other individuals within the organisation that the apprentice provides a service to. This could also be people such as clients and customers. Anybody that has any dealings with the apprentice helps. Meet often, agreeing smart goals with your apprentice and make sure that they are smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-bound. Share best practice seen with others in the organisation, as this boosts self-confidence. Next, James.
Thanks, Claire. And I think that those smart targets are really crucial. Oftentimes when we set an abstract goal, you leave it open to interpretation. We want to be very specific around what we want apprentices to do. And you'll see that through the action plans that we set with apprentices. We're very specific month by month on what we want them to do, how we want them to do it, when we want them to do it by. Well-being. Now, when apprentices are on programme, just like any other human being, there may come a time when they'll be struggling with their mental health. It could be anxiety, depression, low mood. Equally, they may be struggling with some other element not linked to their mental health, but equally linked to well-being with regards to their housing situation, financial situation, anything that's going to affect their ability to come to work and do a good job for you. It's important that you know that the college has got well-being support available through our student services team. The support is free. It's confidential. You can make a referral via your apprenticeship skills tutor or anybody at the college, and they will support them with emotional well-being. They'll support them with workplace adjustments. Now, oftentimes that will come via your apprenticeship skills tutor, and often they may find that they actually want to support the apprentice and they'll confide in the apprenticeship skills tutor rather than you as a mentor. And that's nothing personal. It's just because oftentimes they worry about how them making a disclosure around their mental health will affect their job status, and so sometimes they'll make that disclosure to the apprenticeship skills tutor. We have a duty of care to those apprentices, and where appropriate, we will make a referral ourselves. And if they ask us to keep it confidential, we will do. There are certain things that we won't keep confidential, and we will let you know as an employer, but that can be found under our safeguarding policy. They'll also support with coping strategies. We often see apprentices can become overwhelmed, especially leading up to endpoint assessment. If you're on a 4-year apprenticeship and everything comes down to one endpoint assessment on one day, that is a lot to take on for an apprentice. So we know that that is an emotional time, and we do have apprentices that have wobbles at that time. Our apprenticeship skills tutors are trained to make sure that they provide that support and a step-by-step support plan is put in place. Equally, when you find out as a mentor that an apprentice is struggling, it's important that you make that referral to us as well, so that you can access all of the support that the college has got available. So that kind of concludes the webinar. We've got a little bit around next steps. So we offer a mentor workshop. It's a half-day online workshop where we go into a deep dive on some of the themes and stuff that we've done on here. We also cover the e-portfolio system OneFile that we use. So we've not mentioned that today, but everything that we've spoken about with regards to off-the-job training, reviews, anything to do with their apprenticeship will be stored on OneFile. So it's important that you as a mentor have a working knowledge of that. So our mentor workshop's a great opportunity for you to get a bit more of an understanding of our OneFile system. If you feel like today was enough information for you and you can be an effective mentor, but you still want the OneFile training, we do offer specific OneFile training. It's an hour long, and it's done by our OneFile portfolio coordinator, and she'll go through everything with you. That can be done on a one-to-one basis if you've got specific questions, but equally we do well during the summer we do it monthly, and then we do it quarterly at any other time to help train you on exactly what you need to do. We've also got a number of publications. So we're just about to launch our Introduction for Employers booklet, which goes through the high expectations that we've got. And we've also got a manager's guide for supporting your apprentice that goes through some of the themes that you've got. So if you watch this webinar and take the mentor's guide, it'll certainly help you and anyone else that you want to delegate as a mentor, the advice that they would need to become an effective mentor. And then finally, speak to the team if there's any specific advice or guidance that you'd like. And our contact details are there. Of course, you can speak to your skills consultant, your apprenticeship skills tutor, or contact us on those details there. So that concludes our mentor webinar.
Fabulous, James. Thank you very much for that. That was excellent. We don't have any questions at all because both you and Claire did a very, very thorough job. So thank you. I just have a few more bits to add to the end of this webinar to help people. We do have a number of lunchtime webinars, and we recently did a webinar on the endpoint assessment. You can view this webinar, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, on the RN Group's website page under the partnership area under webinars. And we have a list of webinars there on various different topics that could be interesting for employers, such as T-levels, higher technical qualifications, guide to apprenticeships, all of those sorts of things, as well as their endpoint assessment. Just to support what James was saying, the RN Group will actually be launching a new activity in September to support employers and the drive for skills. It's called Skills for Employment, and it will be an activity where learners can develop their transferable skills or their power skills that will certainly support with skills like communication, resilience, attendance, and that will really help. Something where we're hoping will really help employers gain excellent employees as well as apprentices as they develop those transferable skills that are key for driving business growth in the economy. We do have a lot of apprentice literature online, as James alluded to. If you go onto the RNN Group website and go on to publications, you will see a vast array of literature, including the new Induction guide for employers for apprenticeships. So do visit that. And if you have any more ideas as an employer of guides or support you need, please do just email the apprenticeship team and they'll forward that to me and we'll make sure that happens. And then finally, our next webinar is actually going to be held in the evening on the 27th of June. As employers, you may be parents of anxious learners starting at college in September. So we are putting on a special evening webinar for parents of students who are starting at college to allay those anxieties that you may have as a parent with your young person starting at college. So we have already got loads of questions lined up for this event. So if you are interested, go on the RNN Group website and then the webinar section, and you can book on to that webinar being held on the 27th of June. So all it remains me to do is to thank Jason, James and Claire for this fantastic webinar. I learned an awful lot, so thank you. Thank you to all those out there who have tuned in and those who will be tuning in to watch this. And do keep checking back on the webinar page because we will be continuing to run these free webinars for everybody to be able to enjoy. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.